A linguist talks about sentiment. Why is the view of a linguist important? Well, we assume that the way that people talk reflects the way they think. And as multimedia researchers, we would like to understand the way that people think about multimedia and about what is expressed by multimedia. In this video, we look at how we express the existence of sentiment using language. But first, why don't we usually talk to linguists? Well, linguists simultaneously talk and talk about talking. Linguists say things like, language works without complete specification. We are saying something by not saying anything? What does that mean? Inside, you may not feel a warm, fuzzy feeling for linguists, but that's okay. I hope you find this video useful anyway. And speaking of your internal state, let's talk about subjectivity. When we talk about sentiment, we enter into the domain of subjectivity. Let's first agree on what we mean with subjective. The idea of subjectivity is centered around private states. Private states are mental states not open to external observation or validation. For example, Matt likes milk. This expresses a private state of Matt. Contrast this example with Matt drinks milk. This does not express a private state of Matt. How do we see this? In order to validate Matt drinks milk, you simply observe the behavior of Matt. In order to validate Matt likes milk, on the other hand, it is not wrong to gather evidence by observing the behavior of Matt. However, the only authority who can truly validate Matt likes milk is Matt. Well, the big picture is more complex. So we have other cases that feel the same but are treated differently by linguists. For example, Matt talks with linguists. Let's think about external validation. Looking at someone, we cannot observe they are a linguist. Is being a linguist a private state? No. We agree that when we say someone is a linguist, it is not their private mental state. Let's look at another example. If you know someone is lactose intolerant, you know that milk makes them miserable. Is liking milk still a private state? Yes, like is always a private state. So linguists are happy to talk to you for hours about a wide range of cases, but here we focus on the simple contrast. Matt likes milk, which expresses a private state, and Matt drinks milk, which is externally verifiable. So, linguists call verbs such as like psychological verbs. Examples of these verbs are hate, love, like, adore, respect, despise, deplore. When we're talking, when we use a psychological verb, we must include an experiencer and a stimulus. Matt likes milk. Matt is the experiencer. Milk is the stimulus. The experiencer is the entity that answers the question, who has the private state? The stimulus is the entity that answers the question, what gives rise to the private state? Okay, now that we have these concepts, we come to sentiment. When we use psychological verbs in language, we are expressing the existence of sentiments. We do not need to use this set of verbs. We can express the existence of sentiments in other ways as well. For example, Matt thinks milk is good. However, when we talk about sentiment, we can always identify someone with a private state and something that gives rise to that state. Matt thinks milk is good. Matt has the private state. Milk gives rise to the private state. So, if you want to drive a linguist mad, you can try to study sentiment without experiencers. Linguists go crazy when they read papers that claim to study sentiment without making clear who is assumed to hold the associated private mental state. It is tempting to study sentiment without experiencers because we seem to see it all over the place. For example, milk is good. Linguists are annoying. No experiencers, right? However, remember, language works without complete specification. So, when we interpret milk is good, linguists are annoying, we understand that there is an implicit experiencer. We can see this by thinking the sentences correspond to underlying thoughts. For example, in general, people think that milk is good, and recently I find that linguists are annoying. A linguist will beg you always to consider who you are assuming to hold a sentiment. Further, working with multimedia means that we also have to be thinking very carefully about what we are assuming to be the stimulus. I'm going to give you an example. Imagine that you find the following images associated with this sentiment. Great! We use this example to point out that there are multiple possible experiencers. For example, the woman in the image, the person taking the image, and people viewing the image. Note that the experiencer may be depicted in the image, but may not be. Here we see the woman, but we do not see the potential viewers. Where's the danger? Well, making the assumption that any arbitrary experiencer would find the image great leads you to false generalizations. To see this, note that this is soy milk. Some people don't like it. We also point out that there are multiple choices of the stimulus as well. Different stimuli are possible. For example, milk, the act of drinking milk from a carton, the scarf worn by the woman. A linguist will beg you to realize that the stimulus might not be literally depicted in the image. Examples of stimuli that are not literally depicted are artistic merit and the cultural trend. For example, social inclusion of lactose intolerant people via soy milk. Another possible stimulus, which is not literally depicted in the image, is the way in which the image is framed. Finally, the stimulus may even be completely independent of the image content, the memory of the day the image was taken. So, in sum, language works without complete specification, and sentiment requires thinking carefully about what can be overlooked, specifically the experiencer and the stimulus.